Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi.
Wow. My video isn't working for now, but I will make it work in 8 minutes.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. They're so big.
What's their name?
This one's Piper.
Oh.
And that's Zeke. They're
What?
not at all shy. And then there's another one, Cora. You can almost see her on the table back there, or on the chair back there.
Oh, I love the definitions in the meeting notes.
Yeah, I think Casey must have been working on that.
Yeah, they look really good
Yeah.
and helpful.
God, which document is that in? We have too many documents.
So I'm
Too many documents. File.
Meeting minutes, and I'm opening up the Echo event planning doc,
Okay.
or it says Echo overview, but I think I switched the name to planning doc. I'll put it in the chat. Oh yeah, Echo Hackathon planning doc. So right now it's just a jumble from our meeting when we were writing down some research questions and looking at the columns in the Echo export. But so far, so Sarah and Cole have come up with a list of faculty for the new lab grant proposal.
That's correct.
And then we also wanted to talk about the Jupyter Notebook integration, like what place that would hold in an event. And maybe we should start with that since we did that next week. For the sake of transition.
I would love to also quickly talk about a Jupyter Notebook version for Sunrise once Casey gets here. And I think it will be good for us to just review the list of funding possibilities and their timelines, just to kind of maybe put them onto some kind of calendar so that we don't forget about them.
Yeah.
That's all. Cole and I have a list together that we can quickly review with everybody.
I'm writing this on the planning doc, and I can either copy it into the meeting agenda, or someone else can take notes.
Can you guys hear Lotus? I couldn't.
Yeah, Lotus, you're a little muffled.
Oh.
Where are you today?
I'm at home. I'm working from home.
It's a bit better.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I can take notes in the hackathon planning doc.
Okay, I've been putting notes in the agenda.
Okay. So how are we imagining the Jupyter Notebook integrating with something like how would Sunrise use it? How would we use it at the event, and who would use it?
I mean, my imagination of it is that we would have something like a GitHub repository that maybe has a kind of more accessible front end to it than just going straight to GitHub, and the tracks are kind of laid out there, and there's some sort of relatively obvious link to a Jupyter Notebook that is operating online, and you basically almost use it like a Google form where you put in the location you want to look at and it spits out the results, but you don't really interact with or have to know what's happening on the back end. But if you are able to, you can. Is that a feasible imagination, Kelsey?
Yeah, I have that mostly set up actually. If I can figure out how to host the file properly for the data itself. Rob was like, oh, why don't you just put this on Google Colab? And so I did, and it was a one-click thing, other than hosting the CSV file. But my question for the Sunrise thing, and I guess for Echo Watch too, is once we generate a report for somebody, or once somebody generates a report for themselves, I should say, what do they actually do with it?
Yeah,
And for Sunrise in particular, Sunrise has such a clear goal of enacting federal climate change legislation through pressure, that I'm not positive there's a version of the notebook that directly speaks to that goal, unless there's some other Sunrise strategy we can tie it into.
So I was thinking that that Sunrise has been getting various people to sign on to the Green New Deal, and that one Jupyter Notebook we could do would be looking at congressional district and, have they signed on to the Green New Deal? What does enforcement and violations look like in their district? Or have they already agreed to sign on to the Green New Deal, but actually once you look at their environmental behavior in their district, what does it actually look like? So that's one tack I was thinking. And then the other tack I was thinking that's more an informational track of like, well, okay, so what is the carbon footprint of our district or our area? What are the big companies operating in our space? That's more about identifying points of pressure for people in your congressional district. So like, we have a big power plant in our district. It has this enormous carbon footprint kind of thing.
how would we calculate carbon footprint?
There is a column in Echo, right, for greenhouse gas?
Yeah, I haven't looked at it too closely, and the main reason I haven't is because it's pretty sparsely populated. A pretty standard thing to do in data science, which is, in any data science project, you have to go through a data cleaning phase, and a really common thing to do is just kind of, there's a function you can call called drop NA, and it just gets rid of every row where it doesn't have data about the thing. But it's kind of like, okay, missing data matters a lot, actually. I can't remember who was talking about that in the recent, the meeting we had on Wednesday about following up with the EPA. It was Nick. Wanted to make sure that one of the things we looked at especially through Echo Watch, was having people kind of outline where data is missing, and have that be a big part of the push, I guess. And I can see that being a really nice EDJ focus for a Green New Deal push.
Yeah.
I can go back to my R script from when I did that data analytics class and did a whole analysis of Echo. And I think there was one chunk where I calculated where data was missing and where it wasn't, and did the drop NA thing. So I can go back there and see.
But so I think right now, I think it's before we get too hung up on speculating of like whether or not Sunrise is interested, all that kind of stuff, we should just try and develop a prototype and then basically show them the idea and gauge their level of interest.
Yeah, I don't normally agree with that, as an entrepreneur, like in the tech entrepreneurship space, it's a not great idea to build your tool and then show it to people and see if they want it, because the building your tool is the most resource intensive thing. But in this case, I basically have already gotten to the prototype, so there's not a lot to lose there.
Yeah, and I think it's just really is about, it's hard for them to imagine what it would be like. It's different from tech entrepreneurship because it's really hard for them to imagine what it would be like. And so I think of it more as like a proof of concept that we would then develop more for their needs. Yeah, but I think that you kind of have to show them how it could work.
Yeah, I think we're at the right stage with the demo to just say, like, this is the kind of thing you can make.
Yeah, except I do think we need to put something about carbon footprint or congressional district in it. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Does congressional district map well to zip code?
Can you hear me?
I don't have any clue about that. Does anybody know about that?
I don't know. I'm also curious if
Oh,
congressional district is a better like indicator than EPA region. I'm not sure how much Congress people have over like how much sway they have over like resources that environmental agencies actually dedicate to various enforcement issues.
But the whole point of this, okay, so Congress is required to make sure that EPA enforces environmental law. And, you know, our last enforcement report resulted in Congress saying to EPA, you're not enforcing the law. So I think the hook of this is showing congressional representatives what enforcement looks like in their district.
Yeah, okay.
And making that argument that EPA is not enforcing the environmental laws in your district, no matter how green you say you are.
Right.
And it does seem like if you try and find congressional district, it does seem like zip code is the primary thing you use.
Yeah.
But I don't know, how would we match across, like, or could we do how could we match across zip code and congressional district, do you think?
Hey, okay.
Casey?
You can, we can use GIS to do that. And maybe, yeah, I was wondering if districts can have a set, the zip codes comprise districts or like, you know, come together to make districts, or if the zip codes are split up a bit. But there's a way in GIS to like spatially, it's an estimation, but to form, yeah, to like combine the regions with the zip codes.
I'm reading up on Wikipedia about it. Hey, Casey.
But anyway,
Hello.
yeah, Cole's point. Hey, Casey. Yeah, the Congress is signing on to the Green New Deal, but I also think it is worth also looking at EPA, and you know, it would be the same structure computationally. It would just be a different space, right? It would just be a different set of data and region.
Yeah.
Like the algorithm would be the same.
Yeah, well, so what makes that, so that is a much bigger lift programmatically than what we're currently doing, because right now there is there's a table, or that one of the columns is zip code, and I can just search on it. So it's very easy. It's definitely possible to do it this more complicated way, because we do have latitudes and longitudes. They're estimated latitudes and longitudes, but they should theoretically be fine. But just as a heads up, it's not easy, but it is a thing that's possible.
Well, so then why not? Why not? Let's try and just put an output, column that is there for greenhouse gas. And so there's one of those things. And then if we make a pitch to Sunrise, we would be saying, and we think it's technically possible to organize this by congressional district if that's interesting. But to Kelsey's earlier point, like not doing a big heavy lift to try and build it unless that's seems like the right move.
Yeah, if that's available, that would be so helpful. But like if the resources aren't available, like it's not necessary, but if like we could include the potential for it to end up being organized by district, like pending whatever process, that'd be a really compelling point, I think.
I'm lightly concerned about being the only developer on this project and this not being my only project. So I want to make it as simple as possible.
I have a graduate certificate in data analytics, so I do have that background.
Cool. So if you're up for that as well, that's great. I assumed you were busy with the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I can't lift it alone, or even I think just with you. So that is a valid point. I think we do need to find some more data science people to get onto this project. And I also, I emailed Rohan, hoping to get him to be more involved in EDJ. So hopefully he can join the team.
I think this is a great place where we could leverage the Sunrise Boston data team, because their whole thing is that they, want projects for people to get involved. So if they could outsource to us, that might be a good way for them to engage new members. If we can get that connection going. I was going to have a meeting yesterday with the head of the data team and sort of get his input and his take on everything. So maybe we could invite him to this meeting next and see if he might have more thoughts on people's processing.
Are they a channel on the national Slack?
It's the Boston Slack.
Oh, okay. Because I'm on the national Slack, and if there was a channel, I could just drop this repo, and I bet people would probably run away with a little bit. And it is already on GitHub, so it's designed for collaboration.
It might be. It might be. I'd be surprised if there wasn't a group of people doing data analytics for Sunrise National. So we could try to find someone for national.
All these ideas seem like good ones to me. If we think we're ready with kind of a short version of what the goals of the project are, I think it would be great to try and build more technical support. I'm also wondering about the couple of new data people who've come on board at EDJ. Who was the guy who joined All EDJ last week?
Stefan?
Was it Stefan? But it might be worth asking him too. So do we think we're ready for that? Are we ready to do outreach to try and bring in more developers? Or what would we need to get there?
I would much rather start by making sure we have a real pull for this.
What do you mean by that?
That we know what we want it to do and that there are people who are ready to receive it.
But I think we're also stuck in we want to have input from other people to really fine tune what we're going to do to make sure that we are, meeting, for instance, Sunrise's needs. So it's sort of a catch-22.
What I propose is that we just see what it looks like to add the greenhouse gas stuff to the current Jupyter notebook, and to try and get the project to where it is web accessible, so we can kind of demo it relatively easily. And then I think we should, work on just a slide deck that's a pitch, and in the beginning of March, try and have meetings with Sunrise to pitch it to them. Unless, Casey, you want to just do it more informally by chatting with people that you know. Or Kelsey.
I think I can definitely start grassroots planting seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe I think both would be useful for sure.
I like the idea of planting seeds. And we still,
Centralizing the idea.
yeah. And it would also be good to talk to that list of faculty that Cole and Sarah put together, because they might have some good ideas of what we can do, especially Dietmar.
Yeah, well, he sounds like he's on board, so that's good news.
Yeah.
I also want to note that I don't think whether or not we do this necessarily hinges on Sunrise wanting to do it. You know, we could reach out to all of the other people who hosted data rescue events and in the first place and see if they're interested in doing another event. I think it can be pulled off without a collaboration with Sunrise or with a collaboration with some other network, like Union of Concerned Scientists, or some other environmental org.
Yeah, maybe NRDC even.
Or, yeah.
So XR might be interested as well, like 350 Mass, Clean Water Action, Sierra Club.
Yeah, and I think we want to build a big tent for it anyway, of like, any of you could host one of these events if you want to, you know, and we would be facilitating that.
Would it be worthwhile to like plan, like once we have this, like sort of plan an outreach strategy and like us like come up with maybe people, not just Sunrise, but like all of the local groups or like larger national structures that we think this could ladder into well, and then sort of like once we have our plan, move forward with an actual outreach strategy, and be doing that and sort of like trying to bring people on board and provide this as a resource for them.
Yeah, and I think Jen Perrone is well positioned to start figuring out who those people are for us, the person who's been brought on to help with partnerships. So if we can kind of give her a one-page document about this project, I think she can start thinking about that strategy with Kelly. And what I was thinking for, you know, what Lourdes and I have been kicking around as an idea is if we do something in Boston had 3 data rescue events at it. You know, we had Northeastern, Harvard, and MIT. And so if it's a good site to try and kick something off, because we could collaborate with Boston Center for Future Civic Media, which is who we collaborated with on the last event, and Northeastern University Libraries, and see if they want to host an event again, and then invite the people who did the MIT and Harvard events last time, to see if they would pick it up. And I think,
wasn't there some sort of falling out with the data refuge people?
there was a big falling out with the data refuge people, so I think probably reaching out to them would not be a good idea. But you know, it's been a number of years.
Yeah. And
that was basically, it was a falling out mostly over branding and like who owned it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, I mean, it's just one of those silly things that happens with success where everybody's like, oh, now I need to be the person who came up with this idea.
Yeah.
And I think as long as we're not, like, that's one of the reasons why it might be nice to come up with a media strategy now and more branding at the beginning, so we can say, okay, at a bare minimum, if you're hosting one of these events, we expect Edgy's logo to be somewhere, which was essentially what the data rescue stuff came down to, is like whose logo got put where.
Jeez. It's like, why can't you just have like 2 logos side by side?
I mean, let's just have like a lot of logos. And people got upset with each other, and it just, you know, that stuff gets hard to fix.
Yeah.
Is that something that we want to be doing now, or is that something that we want to do like right as we were saying, right before that outreach push?
Well, so I reached out to Maya and Dawn, who really were like the internal maintainers of the data rescue. So Maya is a graduate student from Harvard who went to the second data rescue event and then helped organize the next Harvard data rescue event. And then if you watch the training videos for that event, she's mostly in them. And then Dawn did a lot of the back end stuff. She organized the GitHub and kept the kept the different tracks in order. And so I think getting there, I would say our next step is getting a really clear sense from them what they thought was most difficult, how they think this kind of event needs to be supported, what their recommendations are for a next round. Because like the thing with Data Refuge happened because the first event was in Toronto and the second event was in Pennsylvania, and the University of Pennsylvania Library developed this whole kind of logo thing around it that branded what EDJ was doing, and then started putting that brand over everything. And where people in EDJ got upset was they weren't actually doing a lot of the work. And yeah.
I remember that.
Things fell out from there.
So should we invite Maya and Dawn to a meeting and just pick their brains, both of them at the same meeting?
That's what I was thinking. Unfortunately, Dawn has a root canal next Thursday, but we could do another time. And I haven't heard back from Maya yet.
Okay.
And Maya really put just an enormous amount of labor into some stuff, and she did it all unfunded. So I'm really curious to hear what she thinks.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I think,
while awesome last time, did have a powerful degree of burnout for people.
Oh yeah.
Which is why we should talk about funding.
And I don't think it would be that scale for now. Like, do you think this would actually blow up? Like a whole archiving of everything project?
I think it would be awesome if it did.
Yeah.
I mean, my overall goal, and maybe this is totally not feasible, is that it would really really highlight the problem of enforcement and lack of enforcement, and things that the data rescues generated was just an enormous amount of media attention. And for all of those people who want to protest but don't want to be in the streets and protesting, it provides a really concrete activity. And it was such, I don't know how many of you were in the data rescues, but it's such an amazing experience going to MIT's hall and having 200 people in there on a Saturday working on different aspects of this thing, having walked in off the streets and not known anything about what they were doing, and really feeling like they contributed to something. It was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah.
And it's really what built EDJ in the first place, And
another thing that we brought up before is that a lot of other states have echoes for themselves that are state specific. I just learned that Texas has one. And we've discussed this as a prototype. So it doesn't have to be just echo specific once the ball gets rolling.
Yeah. And I think from an EDJ perspective, the idea would be to demonstrate that people really care about enforcement and they will show up. And so one of the really important tracks for the data rescue was the storytelling track, where people who didn't have any coding experience, didn't have any background, went around and recorded the stories of what was bringing people there and shared them on social media and wrote them down. And that, I think, is a really interesting track for people who want to come and do this, but they're going to find the Jupyter Notebook stuff just too alienating.
And
Unless
we can find a developer that who's just joined us.
It's me. I'm dialing it over my computer's about to die.
Okay.
Making the circle.
I mean, it'd be great to find a developer, because the Python, the Jupyter Notebook's pretty much the back end. And if a developer can, funnel that to a front end form of some sort, where you put in your zip code, you put in your congressional district, you put in your EPA region, and eventually there's a tool for anybody that anybody can use.
Yeah, and to Kelsey's point about like what are people going to do once they've got this report, I think that's one of the most difficult things, because the last thing for data rescue, we didn't ask anybody to do any analysis, but like providing something about like, okay, what does this mean? What are the next steps? That kind of stuff, that where they would report back to other people there what they found in the report. That's, you know,
And I think it would be great to pair the report with stories. And so one thing that was great about Data Rescue was that there was a story track, but I don't remember hearing stories, like getting a deliverable of some sort.
so this goes back to the data refuge edgy split, because the data refuge is where all those stories are housed. So I think there are story archives on the data refuge site. And they were really interested in that idea of like data storytelling. And
Yeah.
they've ended up funding like a whole set of things. They got a huge grant to work on data storytelling from following this stuff. So here, data refuge stories.
I feel like I've talked too much. Kelsey, Cole, do you have, or Casey, do you have any other ideas?
I feel like I need to like, I'm still struggling with just personally based on my lack of knowledge about like, all, you know, how it all works. So I feel like I'm still learning. So I don't have anything right now, but I'm trying to just play catch up.
Cool, you're muted.
It might be like easier if we can like see it in action, you know, because I know we didn't really get to that point last week to see like how an accessible version of this would look. So like it's hard to say how, or like guess how it could be useful to different people if I still don't really have an idea for myself of what it would look like.
Yeah.
I think going off of that, if we could like yeah, do a practice run or something like that, or just like learn how to do this on our own in some way, like, or have like a concrete small task, and then we would have a better idea of what it might look like. I don't know if that makes sense.
I agree. Kelsey, do you feel like you're ready to demo? Or, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, I can show you if you like. Didn't I showed a report last week, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
What would you like to see, Cole?
I don't think we got to the point last week where we were individually being able to use it, like what the actual interface would be like for a person with no data knowledge.
Yeah. We were sort of right at the end of like troubleshooting the PIP not working.
Or maybe something that's lost is the path it takes to get to what Kelsey was demoing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is for me, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe it would also help to just have a basic flow chart. Like,
yeah,
that
like
would be
you
amazing.
start
Here, and then it flows to GitHub, or it flows to Jupyter, flows to GitHub, and just like this difference, the system that's happening.
So I can show you.
Yeah, I think breaking it down for ourselves so that we can break it down for others would be, I think, a really useful way to go about it.
Well, I think in order to move to that, we should not maybe ask Kelsey to do that right now, but I think we're supposed to kind of demo the project or describe the project at all edgy. So I think we should work on a slide deck that kind of has the objectives for the event, and then has screenshots and, like Lourdes is saying, the workflow that kind of makes the project just more accessible.
I always like a good PowerPoint.
Well, so there's a couple things that I can show you right now that might be helpful. One of them, actually, here is a link. This is what it will look like once I get the CSV file hosted, but it doesn't currently work. It's not, Jesus, sorry, there's a cat on my lap. So that link is not going to function only because I don't have the CSV file hooked up to it. But once you do, it'll work exactly the same as when you're running it locally. And by running it locally, my guess is that how complicated you think it is based on how it looks is not how complicated it actually is. Let me see.
A lot of it can be made less daunting by just hiding the syntax stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I don't really know, like, that's a thing that you can do. I mean, kind of the point of a Jupyter notebook is that everything is visible. So there's no secrets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see exactly how it works. But if you had this running locally, or if this collab thing was working, there's literally two things that you would need to do in order to generate a report as a random user who doesn't know code. The first thing would be you'd enter a zip code here, and let's do a different one than this. And then the second thing would be run all, and then you just wait. And then still running, but as soon as this runs, this will go really quick. I know it looks like a lot of code.
So I think it's a matter of knowing where to look. Oh yeah, no, it's clear where to look.
The thing where you say my zip.
Yeah, but maybe there is a better way to highlight that.
But then that's it. So here we then have the
Yeah.
entire report is just automatically generated.
Yeah.
That was the entire flow.
How about, does Jupyter, I know in R that there are dashboards that you can easily create, that your script like goes immediately to, and I think it's an HTML dashboard that will have more pretty and clean visualizations. Is there something similar?
In general, I expect that's true. There's a lot of stuff built for Jupyter. I have been using Jupyter for about 4 months, so I don't really know anything.
So I'm gonna put that on our list just as something to explore.
Well, and I think you do get into this next question of like, okay, now I see this, what do I do with it, kind of thing. And I think that's also part of the pathway that we should define. Like, we are interested in you running a report for your area, and then we're interested in you sharing that report on a map along with like what you thought the key findings were, like what stuck out to you, what was surprising, how many places were out of compliance in your area. I think we have to do something to kind of figure out how to have people have a conversation and distill findings from these reports. And so, I think that's maybe something that All-Edgy could pitch in on to think about, or if that's feasible.
What I would love to see, like, ideally, and I don't know if this is possible or if we have the right connections, but this reminds me very strongly of New York Times pieces, like data pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of them where you enter your zip code and you get a bunch of graphs out, and it's super cool. And these go viral. And if we could get a contact within the New York Times, and I'm like racking my brains because I feel like I probably met a couple of them at various developer conferences, like in that space. And I definitely don't have a strong contact, so don't smile too much, Sarah. But like,
worked with one of the
Yeah.
former director, what was her?
Managing editor.
Former managing editor has been a good, strong collaborator of ours. So we do have a good connection at the New York Times.
Yeah, and I know
Well,
one of my professors from college was actually the GIS person at the New York Times. So maybe I can find, I don't know, I think she might have left, but maybe I can find
because that
her
would be, I mean, that would be so much bigger than just having a few people at an event try to do this and then try to take it somewhere. Is really like the story is you can personalize how enforcement is impacting your local area. You can see it and you can understand it and you can be outraged, and that's the intended result.
I think the benefit of getting people together is like it matters to get people together to be outraged together.
Yeah, also true. But like the reach of something like the New York Times is, I guess, a totally different, like that would be more exciting to me because people who show up to activist type events are already activists.
I mean, I think my suggestion would be that we advertise this as something for journalists to come to and create conduits for story generation at these events. And, you know, I think collaborating with something like New York Times is good, but I do think that is only it's never, you know,
and for
certain audience, it's only going to reach.
I wonder too if there's a way.
Computer science students are all over hackathons.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking about just other ways to engage like youth and like to make this an event that isn't just like about getting angry together, but like also creating some sort of actionable change at the same time. Like what's the outcome? Like once you get the information, is there a way to use the information, you know, to make an ask to your representative or something along those lines? I don't know if that resonates or if that's like on base or off base.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking in terms of like congressional districts too. And, you know, also as a way to bring together people who are dealing with like EJ issues in the area who might have, you know, if we were to do this in the various places where there have been explosions of petrochemical plants, for instance, you could potentially get all those people who dealt with being shuttered in place together with journalists and together with youth who are organizing around Sunrise, you know, to kind of have an exchange about this set of issues. So I sort of see it as being a potentially coalition building thing too. Done right, because there have been a lot of those explosions in the Trump period, you know, and we could try and target figuring out hosting these specifically in those areas.
That really goes with what Chris was working on with his students too.
Yeah.
Like maybe in Austin.
Yeah, or Houston. Pennsylvania had that big fire. Pittsburgh had that big explosion.
You know what? There's those code for, this has also been suggested so many times, like code for Boston, code for X city. I think it's worth connecting with those folks.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the time here, and we really do have to talk about some of these funding possibilities and decide if we're going to go for them. So could we take a look at that quickly?
Yeah.
So there's where is the funding document? So the most easy one to do is this Northeastern grant through the new lab, which is a lab for digital humanities. And Dietmar Offenhuber, who's now an EDJ member, is a fellow there. So it's $5,000. It's due March 1st, and it's only a 2-page write-up. And that $5,000 can be used to support a research assistant. So I think that one is really worth doing because it's just a small bit of money that could fund Casey and Cole for summer work on this. Any thoughts on that? Is everybody okay with trying to write that up? And
didn't we have to talk about the eligibility issue with
Yeah.
Casey? So you are graduating at the end of the semester?
I am 100% graduating in May, so I don't know if I would still be eligible for that money.
oh,
I think you might.
we can hire you, whatever happens. But it does mean, I think, that the other two awards, the Peak Award and the Summit Award, which are for fully enrolled Northeastern students, aren't something you can apply for, Casey. So we looked at two other awards that are specifically for undergraduate research at Northeastern. One that's $3,000 called the Summit Award that can be for part-time research, and one that's called the Trailblazer Award that's $5,000. But Casey, I think if you're graduating, you're not eligible for either of them.
Yeah. I mean, I would be totally fine, like trying to look, like I'm sure we could find a lot of interested Northeastern students, also Northeastern students that operate within Sunrise that we could bring on board. I'd be really excited about it.
That's an interesting idea. If you've got anybody else to propose, so the
Yeah,
5,000.
Sarah,
Go ahead.
what about the student in our EJ class, Gabby, who just is in the process of joining EDJ? Do you think she would be interested?
Yeah, she's come on board to do comms stuff, but both Gabby and Kira, who joined the lab could be interested. That's interesting.
And another thing is that we could split New Lab funds, like have New Lab fund Casey, but then Peak Award, Summer Award, or Trailblazer Award, Cole and Gabby could apply for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So the bummer about the Trailblazers, apparently they needed a letter of intent on Feb 7th. So they said they'll consider this, it's just a 50-word thing or a 500-word thing. They said they consider it if we send an email requesting it, but maybe we should just hold off and go for the Summit Award.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm a little worried about with the Summit Award is that it's like due right around midterm season, and it seems pretty like intensive in terms of all of the application process.
When's midterms?
Like over the next few weeks leading up to spring break, which is the first week of March.
I don't really have that much going on for midterm, so I could list that.
What does it require, Cole?
Here, let me pull up the link here.
While Cole pulls that up, I'm just thinking of the action item, like concrete things. And it would, so we have the one pager, right? And now it's a, what, 10 pager?
I think it's 3 or 4.
Okay. And it would be good then to build, let's just write. Like, let's just write a paragraph of, a pitch, a description of what we are thinking about so far, and pull from that 3-4 pager. And then I think that'll also help. And with the PowerPoint, I think that'll help solidify our ideas and really help Cole and the New Lab grant.
Would it be sort of like an abstract type idea?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really doable.
I agree with that.
Go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead, Cole.
I was just gonna say, in terms of the Summit application, so it requires the basic application form, a 3-page narrative project proposal, a week-by-week timetable outlining specific steps and duration of course of action, a 2-page annotated bibliography, a 1-page budget. So
that's basically what we've got written, Cole. That's not so bad. But
okay.
We basically make it up. We've already got the bibliography basically from the syllabus.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 3-page narrative we've essentially written a draft of.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
guess it's not too bad, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually such a big lift.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not starting from scratch.
Yeah, and actually that's not due until the 13th, so I would have spring break to work on it too.
Well, and we'd all help you write it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to work on it during spring break.
Well, I mean, I'm already working all of spring break anyways, so.
Oh.
I think it's on my midterms be after spring break. So the other big funding thing to draw you guys' attention to is a overall project proposal we could make to the Rita Allen Foundation. And that letter of inquiry is due March 6th. So what we need for
Do we want to make a schedule for this, like
Yeah.
a task sheet with with all these grants, and then with the due dates and then the materials needed for all of them? See if we can double up on any of it.
Do we have
Yeah.
a calendar anywhere?
What was that?
Do we have a calendar anywhere?
I don't know.
We have the
I could
edgy
put together a
calendar.
spreadsheet with these deadlines and like requirements.
We could also make a Google Calendar if we wanted to.
Yeah.
I was thinking Trello. I mean, I'm
I
putting
love
everything
Trello.
of mine on Trello, and then that can, then we can attach, the documents to the cards. But that's how I work.
I love Trello. I've never used it outside of work, but I loved it so much for work.
Yeah, I haven't used
sounds
it.
good to me.
And we do have an edgy Trello, or we have an edgy Trello team. So and I think we might have an EDJ board. But I can create a Trello for EDJ if it's not there already.
So for the Rita Allen LOI, I can take the lead on that one, and we need to have a funding discussion, Kelsey, about how much to apply for that. Because they just say however much you want to apply for. So we need to kind of figure out what's the right pitch, probably like 50,000, I think, somewhere in the region of, we could make an ask for. But that, that's also like, I'm not sure how exactly that actually works with the project timeline, because the LOI is due March 6th, and then they say they'll be back in touch with you within 8 months of the LOI submission.
8 weeks.
8 weeks, sorry, yeah, thank you, Paul. Yeah, 8 weeks, and then you submit a full proposal. So we probably would not see any money from that until fall. So I don't know what people think about that.
Well, that could be used for the actual event, like the food and the space, not so much the planning.
Well, I was thinking in terms of timeline that we would actually try and host these events this summer. That may be too optimistic.
Yeah, and then another question I have is the new lab grant, when the funds would be dispersed, like if it is for summer, if it is for the next semester.
Does, I don't know if this is okay in grants or not, but could we do a thing where we conceptualize it as EDJ fronts the money for development of a tool and planning of an event in anticipation of a grant award? And then
Yeah.
the grant is for the thing that we already did when it arrives?
Potentially. And the other thing is that when we did the rescue events last time, 2 foundations just appeared and gave us money. That's how we started getting the Packard and Doris Duke money in the first place. So there's definitely something to just starting to do something and then again getting further funding for it. So I think it's probably worth submitting, because they might say, especially if we say this is urgent, we could do it over this next summer, they might turn it around really quickly. And letters of inquiry are really just about getting a conversation going with a foundation. So I think we can also reach out to Chad at Packard, and see if he knows the Rita Allen people, and that may result in fast tracking stuff too.
Something that just popped to my mind about the timeline is that there aren't a lot of people in Boston in summer.
That's true.
Like, students are gone.
Yeah, it can be very empty.
That is a good point, Lotus. Yeah. I was thinking for Sunrise, summers may be good, because at least the school age kids don't have school.
Yeah.
I was here this summer, and I remember I just heard a lot of talk that was like, God, nobody's here. I can't wait for September when everyone gets back. And I don't know. I don't know. Like, I still don't really have a sense of if that would super true or not, because I feel like I was more involved over the summer. But yeah, and if we were involving other groups, like adult groups, it might be easier, you know, for like Mothers Out Front. You know, they have, you know, those like summer camps, like teachers. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think trying to decide all this stuff is sort of putting the cart before the horse. In the sense, I think we need a working model of what we could do and some partners to really think with. I mean, my main thought is that we should be doing this before November 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe in September, because that's sort of before it's after kids move in, but it's also before the semester really picks up, like before midterms, before there's a lot of homework, and people are out.
I mean, the
and
other
about.
consideration too is like the election. You know, if we want to activate like some voter block or constituency, and like if we want to get news coverage, I mean, I don't know, but I think that that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Maybe that's woo,
Yeah.
but I definitely think that that's like what's going to be on people's minds come September.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, which is why I thought people might want to come out and do this kind of stuff then. Okay, so we have a lot of remaining questions about timeline and stuff, but in terms of concrete to-dos, how should we move forward on the writing? Because it seems like getting a 2-page document together really about the project seems pretty vital.
Should we schedule a writing session?
Yeah. I mean, or we could try and write separately. I think maybe if everybody can read what we've got so far, that would be good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can make a document the different things, the different items we need is sort of an abstract. So we should say 500 words, then maybe 1,000 words, like an email pitch, an abstract, and then a new lab grant proposal.
Yeah, and the LOI.
Yeah.
I have a knock at my door, so I think I have to go. Do you think we could be ready to present to All Edgy next week? I can't actually be there, so I unfortunately can't lead that presentation because I'm giving a talk in Middlebury.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be in class as well on Friday.
Yeah,
Should we
Friday's my
postpone?
full day of work.
Should we postpone to the week after, or are we set to present at Ology?
What's our intention with presenting to Ology?
I think just to try and see what people like Gretchen, who have like heard about this stuff but haven't really engaged, think about it. Trying to see what the overall coordinating committee buy-in is for it, because Gretchen made that post about, well, if this is an EDJ event, like clearly that's no big deal, but it sounded like she was hesitant about whether or not this should be an all edgy effort or not. So I thought it would be good to do a temperature check with everybody in coordinating committee and just make sure we're all on the same page. And then I also thought we could work towards doing a kind of practice event at our all edgy in-person meeting, where we actually just try out the tracks together and see what we think. And that's coming up in March. Yeah, I think it's capacity concerns, Kelsey.
Yeah. It would be a whole Spark meeting.
The other thing is, I mean, I think there's a way to have web monitoring be a track in this kind of event too. So that's the other thing that would be worth filling in here, because there are ways that we could have people look at scraper pages at scanner pages at this kind of event too, and have web monitoring be a track, which I think could be really neat. And then I also thought that would be kind of practice for going to talk to Sunrise, because my sense is like we figure out that there's general consensus within All Edgy that we're ready to reach out to a group like Sunrise to partner on something big like this, and then we reach out to Sunrise in March.
Okay.
But the problem if
Do you
we
want me to invite? Oh, sorry.
the problem is if
Would you like me to invite one of the data people to our next EDJ meeting from Sunrise?
I
Or
think
is that too early?
I would like us to meet with Meyer and I don't know.
I didn't quite hear that.
What do you guys think? I was thinking it might be good to meet with Meyer and Dawn first.
Yeah, and then maybe to invite some Sunrise folks when we're ready for the Spark meeting. So that's when we're, we have a PowerPoint together, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will try and push this back to the Spark meeting that's not next week, but the following week, and say we're going to be presenting about the ECHO events and building towards consensus around this for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a Trello board right now
Awesome.
and invite everybody and then put our action items up there.
Yeah. I do think we're trying to find another developer to address Kelsey's issues. So maybe being Kelsey, you should start reaching out to people on the developer side in Sunrise, that, like you're saying, and just seeing if there's any people who you could say, we've got the idea for this kind of project, which somebody would want to work with us. If you think.
Yeah, I don't know anyone, but it is the kind of thing where if we showed it to people and they got excited about it, it's already ready to be contributed to, I think.
Yeah.
Sarah.
What is
Tubes.
Woohoo!
Sorry.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Kelsey, do you think we could you try putting the greenhouse gas thing into a notebook?
Yeah, I put that on my list for the week.
Awesome.
I want to see if I can do something that's a little bit pitchy around Sunrise stuff, so that we could have one more meeting with just us, and then we'd be ready to talk to somebody from there.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Yeah.
See you next week.
We got a lot to do.
Yeah.
We've got a lot done, and we have a lot to do, which is exciting.
No, we have this horrifying idea of multiple public events to contend with for the summer. But we've got to do our best to try and stop this shit show.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I keep thinking every time I'm exhausted. It's not a shit show.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're at 2:35.
Yeah. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Onward and upward.
Yeehaw. Bye.